All right. It looks like we've got quite a few of the people who responded yes to attending. So we're going to go ahead and get started to respect everyone's time. So welcome, 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 everyone. Thank you so much for joining us here today. My name's Dave the Kid. If you don't know me, I'm the Director of Innovation for the City of Bloomington. I served as the innovation lead on this project. We're so grateful for your interest and support of this project. We look forward to telling you the story of our journey and engaging you in our next steps. Before we get going, the team would like to thank our mayor for supporting innovation by establishing the role of Director of Innovation, and all the departments who have leaned in by allowing a member of their team to have this unique professional development opportunity of participating in innovation training while applying it to a real world issue. And also big thanks to Bloomberg Philanthropies and the Center for Public Innovation, whose grant provided us with training materials. They gave us amazing support and encouragement from the staff throughout the effort. They gave us access to 12 other international cities participating in the same training. And also a big shout out to our expert level coaching from Mr. Tim Fife. So I'm going to turn it over to Nate, who will tell us a little bit about what we're going to be getting into today.
Thanks, Dave. Hi, everyone. My name is Nate Herr, and I work for the City of Bloomington Utilities in the Environmental Programs Division. Today, we'll provide just a little bit of context about the project and the team's process. There is a lot more information on our project page, and we'll provide a URL to that page at the end of this presentation. However, the bulk of what we want to do today is to present the final portfolio of ideas that were generated by this cross-departmental team in conjunction with our residents through a variety of community engagement activities. We also want to get your input on those ideas, engage the level of interest and energy in exploring them further. And then finally, we want to let you know the next steps after this meeting. We started out with a large team consisting of 8 departments, plus Bloomington Transit, as well as the coach that was supplied to us by the Center for Public Impact, Tim Fife of Tim Fife Consulting. Here is our original Bloomington team. During the course of our project, we had 4 members leave the organization. 1 baby was born to a team member, congrats to the Pierce family, and 3 members needed to step back due to their departmental workload. We were not alone in this effort. Bloomington was one of 13 cities throughout the United States, North America, South America, and Europe participating in this training. So we were learning not only from our coaches, but from the experience of these other cities as well. We selected sidewalks as our topic for a number of different reasons, but what it boils down to is our residents said sidewalks are important to them, and through our strategic plans, we've said that it is a priority for us. The team used human-centered design for this effort because the solution to the problem is not known. If it were, we would just need project management and not innovation. The Center for Public Impact's framework for human-centered design has 3 main phases: understand the problem, generate and test new ideas, and deliver initiatives. The majority of our time was spent understanding the problem from a variety of perspectives. We are currently at the tail end of the generate phase, where we have prototyped 1 idea and have a portfolio of potential projects to present to you. Our problem statement started out very broad, that there are challenges to constructing and maintaining our sidewalks equitably. When we dug a bit deeper, it seemed like the problem was about baking equity into how and where sidewalk funds are used. However, after the midpoint presentation, some of our primary stakeholders from Public Works, Engineering, and Planning let us know that they were already making changes to ensure equity and transparency in the decision-making process. The table you see here includes the weights for the more equitable criteria being used by the Sidewalk Committee. So we went back to the data to review other themes that emerged during the initial research. And now I will hand it over to Clarence Boone, who will talk more about our process.
Good afternoon. I'm Clarence Boone from Parks and Rec. While inequity in the decision-making process was a strong theme, we also found that that wasn't what we were hearing directly from residents. When we filtered for what we heard from residents, the whole project simplified. Residents just want to complete their journey without having to step off the sidewalk into traffic and there are some clear barriers to that goal. Data showed us that a majority of the sidewalk segments categorized as being in low to poor conditions are ones that use historic pavers. Additionally, residents are unclear whether sidewalk pavement repair is their responsibility or the city's. Residents told us of having to step into traffic because of hedges not being trimmed and low-hanging branches. And as with pavement repair, some residents aren't clear that trimming hedges and branches are their responsibility, as this kind of maintenance is done by the city on our multi-use pathways, which look an awful lot like sidewalks. We heard stories of residents having to avoid transitions between sidewalks and driveways and alley entrances. One resident said that she avoids Washington Street completely on trash pickup day because she knows that the trash and recycling bins will be blocking the sidewalks. Not pictured here, but definitely talked about, were the many scooters often found blocking sidewalks. And finally, we heard of gaps in the sidewalk network, such as sidewalks ending abruptly without signage to either pedestrians or drivers, that pedestrians will be entering traffic. To generate ideas for addressing these barriers, we connected with the community in 4 ways, with a focus on reaching members of our community in historically disadvantaged areas. We engaged our internal city stakeholders via Zoom call. We approached folks coming into City Hall for other reasons. We engaged with individuals and small groups at the Saturday Farmers Market. And we conducted a 2-hour-long, highly structured event at the Crestmont Boys and Girls Club. For equity reasons, as much as possible, we tried to go where the people were instead of asking them to come to us. We used tools that encouraged participants to go big with their thinking, and they did. We collected 107 ideas through these methods, which range from costly and futuristic, like having autonomous robots to maintain sidewalks, to supremely practical, like having an adulting academy that includes information about sidewalk responsibilities. And just like during our initial research, we identified themes, combined ideas, iterated ideas, and evaluated ideas based on their potential impact and potential for support. Once we had a list of all the ideas we thought had promise, we selected one we thought we had the most control over and developed and tested a prototype. We tested the idea with 9 different households who had 6 different configurations for the optimal location for the bins. Some placements would need to be in grass, some on gravel, some on publicly owned pavement, and others on privately owned driveways. In fact, thanks to the work of Michael Large and an intern who gathered data over the summer, we found that there are at least 14 different combinations of houses relative to yards, driveways, sidewalks, and streets. This finding meant that there isn't one right placement for the bins, and that visual management will need to accommodate grass, gravel, pavement, and asphalt surfaces. Of all the barriers identified by the residents, the one that our team felt we had the most control over was the placement of trash and recycling bins. On the sanitation website, the guidance given to residents is to place their carts at the sidewalk and away from obstructions like trees, cars, and mailboxes. During our prototyping, we found that residents interpreted this instruction differently, which causes different compliance. Our challenge to ourselves was, what if it were easy and obvious to know where to place bins so that they don't block the sidewalk and they are in a good location for sanitation? On the top row of the expert artwork here, you can see the current state, which is that residents place the bins where they think they should go, and sanitation replaces the bins to locations where they think they should go. The bottom row shows the idea for the prototype, some kind of visual management, like a dot on the ground, partnered with an awareness campaign that instructed residents to simply put it on the dot. In addition to getting feedback on the idea, we tested residents, also offered up additional ideas that might be tested. One idea was for the city to use U-Report data to identify the areas of the city with the most blocked sidewalks and place vinyl decals on the ground, pre-thanking people for the behavior that we want to see, keeping our sidewalks and paths clear of everything for everyone. Also, during the testing, team members continued to generate ideas that, had we not been on location, would not have occurred to anyone. One of the barriers we identified on location was the optimal placement for a bin. It might be on the grass, on an incline. So what if we had a small optional kickstand on the front of each bin that could be activated to create a level surface and keep the bin from rolling away? The major learnings from the prototype testing were that optimal bin placement varies by household, and we might need more than one visual management solution to account for the 4 different surfaces of grass, gravel, pavement, and asphalt. Instead of seeing these insights as barriers, we see them as additional information to make a potential pilot more successful. Information that we would not have had we not tested the idea in place and with people who have been impacted by it. If those attending today take just one thing away from this presentation, we hope that it will be this: when rethinking city services, take the time to design iteratively with residents from the beginning. This strategy does take more time in the beginning, but the benefits are a tighter alignment of the idea with the problem you're trying to solve. Surfacing unintended consequences. Creating champions. Our coach Tim Fife told us that people are more accepting of ideas in which they can see their fingerprints. Creating champions can potentially save you time post-implementation, managing pushback, because you have folks in the community helping you manage the information. And then finally, being on site with folks impacted by the potential change can generate new ideas that you wouldn't have thought of if you were in the office thinking about the idea theoretically. What David was explaining was that she will present the 11 ideas from the portfolio that our team felt will have the biggest impact if they are explored. And this will be an interactive part of the session where we get your input on both the impact and viability of each idea. And as she was saying, here's how this will go. She's going to give you some instructions for how you can interact with the information on the screen, but don't act on the information just yet. Please wait until she's finished all the instructions. And after those instructions, she'll paste an URL that you'll see on the screen into the chat, and she'll ask that you go to the first slide. And she will walk through each of the recommendations listed on the screen. And after she's gone through all the recommendations, if you think of an idea, if you think that idea is viable and could get us closer to our goal, click on a green star and drag it to the idea. If you like all the ideas, you can put a green star on each one, but please use only 1 star per idea. If you are not supportive of an idea, click on a red X and drag it to the idea. Same thing here. You can put a red X on all ideas, but please only use 1 X per idea. And please do not put both an X and a star on the same idea. If you are neutral and you aren't sure whether the idea will be impactful, but you're not against it, don't put any mark on it at all. Just leave it be. Then after you've placed your marks, if you would like to comment on why you voted the way you did, use the comment feature in Google Slides. It looks like a talk bubble with a sign, with a plus sign in it, and we'll have time to discuss 2 or 3 of these per slide. Are there any questions before we get started?
It looked like most people voted, but to start off, yeah, so the first one is quarterly communication to residents, something like it's that time of year again, a messaging that reminds property owners to clear their sidewalks, cut back hedges, that kind of stuff. It can be combined with other types of messaging as well. The one in the middle, a single point of contact, formalize the coordination of the work between sidewalk maintenance requests and ADA compliance related concerns to improve responsiveness and transparency by using a single point of contact. I believe the example here was Somebody may call and get passed between public works or engineering or planning. So this idea would give one point of contact for all sidewalk complaints, questions. Top right corner there is decals on notoriously blocked sidewalks that say, "Thank you for helping us keep our sidewalks clear." That's one that Clarence talked about earlier. An interactive sidewalk communication update, something like a QR code on signs near sidewalk maintenance or repair that the city is currently doing. The QR code would link to a page providing the status, including the reason for maintenance, a start date, and an end date. And the last one on this slide is public-private partnerships to maintain sidewalks. Corporations sponsor the sidewalk in a city and maintain them, or they provide funding to the city to maintain them. There would be target organizations that benefit directly from high-quality sidewalks. The first one that comes in mind would be IU sponsoring pathways from high-density student off-campus neighborhoods to campus. So those are the ideas on this slide. It looks like people have voted. So if you move to slide number 2, that shows when Dave did this presentation to internal stakeholders how they voted on these same ideas. So you can see that the quarterly communication was popular in that, and the internal presentation as well as the single point of contact. It looks like the decals were more popular with the internal presentation than they were in today's presentation. The interactive sidewalk communication updates also had some positive energy, but also had some X's on that one as well. And then lastly on this slide, the public-private partnerships, people did not view that one as favorably as some of the other ideas that we had on this slide. So if we move on to slide number 3, we will do the same thing. I'll read through each one of the ideas. An alternate way of commemorating historic sidewalks that is more ADA compliant. Dave had a good statistic here, but there's a certain percentage of sidewalks that are in poor condition, and the majority of those are sidewalks that are historic sidewalks. So coming up with some way of commemorating the historic sidewalks that would be more ADA compliant. A visual management system, that's the one that we prototyped. Put it on the dot prototype where trash and recycling bins go. The bottom one there, in anticipation of more robust street sweeping, having people move their cars to one side of the street on trash pickup day and placing the bins on the side of the street that the cars were not parked on. Larger cities do this, so we thought this idea may work for sidewalks that abutted the street and people could put them in the street. The last one on the right of the slide, a parking enforcement model for sidewalks. Establish a position focused on enforcement of blocked sidewalks. The first one would be a warning, a citation that would be a warning to address the issue by a certain deadline. It'd have resources that would support the resident or the homeowner, and an option for the city to manage the issue for a fee, for example, $25 to cut back vegetation. And then if there were no response or correction by the deadline, they would get a citation. The city would still correct the issue, and then, for example, they would be billed through their water bill. And that would include a mechanism for people who could not afford to pay the full amount for something like that. Give everyone a few more seconds to vote. Okay, so if you move to slide number 4, again, this is how the internal stakeholders voted on these same ideas. All of these ideas were viewed pretty favorably. Not everyone was voted on. Some people may have felt neutral about them, but the alternative way of communicating the historic sidewalks had six votes in a positive way and 1 X. The visual management system had 4 stars and 1 X. And the moving the cars to one side, 3 and 1 X. And then finally, the parking enforcement had 4 positive reviews, with nobody viewing it negatively. So we'll move on to slide number 5. These are our less likely to implement and our most bold ideas. The first one being to explore new funding for sidewalk maintenance, for example, a percentage of property taxes or a new tax or fee differing between resident property owners and businesses. It could be part of the EDLIT fund. We could use parking meter fees, scooter fees for sidewalk repair, and brings community leaders and members to decide what kind of maintenance would be covered and create a proactive, ideally it would create a proactive maintenance program. And then the bottom one on that slide is the city maintains all sidewalks. So we would explore a new funding source like was mentioned in the above idea, and the city would become responsible for all maintenance, which in this idea would include snow removal, repair of sidewalks, vegetation overgrowth, trimming. We would treat sidewalks as a public good like we do roads and multi-use paths. We'll give everyone a few more seconds to think it through and vote. If we move to the last slide in the presentation, you can again see how our internal stakeholders voted. Everyone, or the ones in the internal presentation, viewed both of these ideas favorably. Again, these are our more bold ideas, so we know they would be more complex and more difficult to implement. But thinking big in these ideas, these are the biggest ones we could come up with.
Thanks, Nate. And thanks everyone for your patience. I'm taking a look at that last slide. This is pretty similar to what we saw with our internal stakeholder way that you all voted. And so our next steps, and I'm going to flip back over to sharing the presentation itself. And our next steps are that we'll take the information from our internal stakeholders and from the impressions that you've left today and combine those and prioritize them, make a final recommendation to the stakeholders who would be implementing those ideas, and work with them on identifying which are the ones that are in alignment with their mission and their budget, which are some that are just do it's, and which are some that need a little bit more research or some strategic planning. And I know that we've provided a lot of information to you. We've asked for a lot of interaction from you. So this is our opportunity to open it up to questions. Maybe some of them are, you added them as comments in the voting slides, or maybe there's something else that had occurred to you. So just want to open it up to everyone for any questions. You can use the raise hand function in Google if you like. Okay, Mayor has a question. Go ahead and unmute yourself, John.
First of all, thank you so much. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Wonderful work. I really appreciate it. I love the simplicity of that goal. So I'd like to, keep that front of mind of everybody being able to, I can't exactly remember how you exactly stated it, but, use a sidewalk without interruption. I guess I really do feel like the difference between commercial property or rental properties, business-owned properties, and owner-occupied is an interesting one. And kind of the equity side, there are lots of places that don't have sidewalks, and how do we deal with that kind of from an equitable lens too? It's interesting to think about.
Right. Yeah. Thanks for that. And in when we were developing the problem statement, definitely through the criteria that and the training that we used through Bloomberg was to apply an equity lens to the work that we're doing. And that's why our first stab at a problem statement was really about the decision-making process for where sidewalks are being maintained and where new ones are being developed. And so on those last two ideas, the most bold ones about the increased funding and then the city taking full ownership, we are assuming that that same equity filter would be applied, the new criteria that the sidewalk committee is using as of, I think, last year. But that's, it's something that we want to keep an eye on. And the criteria that they've developed is a good model to start with. Thank you. Any more questions? Soumya or Mariah or Tim, are there any other questions that you have? I know, Tim, you've been walking with us hand in hand throughout this.
I'll just say that I'm just incredibly excited about how far these ideas have gone. The process itself, as Devta and the rest of the team was saying, went through a couple of different pivots, and what we've arrived to in the breadth of the ideas in this portfolio are really, I think, quite impressive. And I think that those questions the mayor was just bringing up about equity is kind of the next step for this. And I think that I'm glad that those questions are being surfaced now. I'm not sure. The only question I had, and it's a very minor one, was I think I might have missed who some of the other internal stakeholders were that had been tested with earlier, just to get a sense of how broad those who have already heard this, how broad that spectrum is.
Yeah, thanks, Tim. So we did a kind of sneak peek with some of the departments who have been receiving the biweekly report. So this is our Public Works Department, our Housing and Neighborhood Development, Planning, Engineering, and our Historic Preservationist was also involved in that. She works within Housing and Neighborhood Department. I'm seeing a question in the chat from Sharon about snow and ice removal. And when we think about, Sharon, those more bold ideas, especially the very last one, where the city would take full responsibility for the sidewalks, it would be treating those sidewalks just as we do our multi-use pathways now. And that would include snow and ice removal. It would include trimming the hedges and taking care of the low-hanging branches. Good question. Any other questions?
I don't have a question, Devta, but I want to step in really quickly from the Center for Public Impact perspective. Hello, everyone. My name is Soumya, and I've been the learning liaison on behalf of the Center for Public Impact, walking alongside the Bloomington team over the past year, and really just wanted to take a second to give a shout out to the entire team that's been a part of this process. They have been the smallest and mightiest team that I've worked with in our projects. And yes, there was a lot of movement on the team, but to see how much the team has done when it came to going out and meeting the residents where they're at, as Clarence really highlighted earlier, of testing with the residents, going into people's streets and neighborhoods and homes, talking to people, ideating with people, setting up brainstorming sessions with people in the neighborhood, really focused on that equity lens as well, to your point earlier, Mayor Hamilton. This team has been so fantastic and has come up with such incredible solutions to these ideas, and are committed to moving forward in a way that is just truly, truly impressive. And so I just wanted to give a shout out to all the people that I have worked with over the past year, basically, and just highlight the incredible perseverance that they have shown. You all have some incredible talent at the city, and wanted to celebrate that. But also, I'm going to turn it over to Mariah really quickly so she could say a few things as well.
And I will keep it brief because I see that the questions or comments are still coming in. Echoing everything that Soumya and Tim said, this team has shown such perseverance. And I do also really want to celebrate Devta's work to, not only champion innovation within this project, but to continue to really think about how she can bring innovation and process improvement and design and community equity work to others in City Hall. So I'm really excited about where this work can continue to go, both on sidewalk management, but also more broadly on innovation and collaboration across silos. But I will pass it back to the comments and the questions here.
Thanks, Mariah. Yeah, the first one is coming from Beth Rosenbarger. Beth, you can go ahead and unmute.
Hey, thanks for having us. I wanted to comment that I love the bold ideas. I can't help it. I love it so much. I think in the tiny circle that I'm in of transportation planner, walking advocates, there is a saying that's like, well, we're going to clear sidewalks as the city, but we're going to ask residents to clear the street in front of their home. And it gets a wild reaction because people are just like, that's crazy. And I think kind of questions like that can be just really fun. Like, why would that be so crazy compared to what we're doing? So I don't know. I really like the bold one. I think, like somebody said, if we weren't ready for the complete bold step, a tamed down version could be differentiating. I don't know what to call this, but like the temporary maintenance versus structural or capital maintenance of sidewalks. So if property owners were still responsible for snow removal and clearing out leaves, but any structural thing that needed to get fixed on a sidewalk was always the city's responsibility, or something like that might be an in-between version. And my other comment was, we could consider a zoning requirement about trash bin locations. And I think the work you all have, it would only work in terms of new properties that happen, but it's sort of the other saying of like, if you're digging a hole, the first thing is to stop digging. So if we wanted to do something like that, I think the work you all did to like identify all the situations, it would really only apply in some, and clarifying that and saying like, when this is triggered for an existing property, people have to have these bin locations included or whatever. So that could be a systems way to incorporate it, I think. But thanks so much. I love this topic and I enjoyed the presentation.
I love that you're thinking about how the different things that we need to consider when implementing, and also the different things that we need to consider when prioritizing. So that kind of comes to Angela's question also, which is, how are we going to decide which idea we want to pilot? And our next steps are combining the impressions of the internal stakeholders as well as this larger group, and then going back to the departments who would be responsible for the implementation, and really understanding if any of the ideas align with the work that they've already got planned, with their budgets and with the capacity that we have to implement something like this. So we have done a prototype of one idea, and we may go to that group and they'll say, actually, that's not one that we have capacity to expand into a pilot until 2024. So what we would like to do in the interim is maybe work on the promotion campaign, the advertising campaign, or maybe we would like to dedicate some resources to researching different funding mechanisms for the potential eventuality of the city taking full responsibility of all the sidewalks. So there are a lot of, there's a lot more conversation that still needs to happen, but we wanted to bring this group together first to let you know of the work that we've been doing over the past year, but also to gather those impressions and really understand, kind of take a pulse of the organization and drawings from people outside of the organization thoughts as well. Okay. Address the overgrown and blocked sidewalks since 2016. Yep. More thoughtful, comprehensive, and iterative. Better. Thank you so much, Mayor. Any other thoughts? Well, what you've experienced today is how much of a superstar both Clarence and Nate are. And them over doing the few dry runs that we've had, they were able just to step in, and this is how they've been throughout throughout the whole project of this year too, is where do you need me to slot in, what can I be doing differently, and then also really taking the effort to think differently. Need for innovation, and we got that from them, and we were able to get all of the information, the research and the in-person information because of the commitment of these guys. So yeah, thank you. So the mayor is asking another, can we talk about commercial versus owner occupied property? How do we think about that? That's a great question. For this project, our scope was really looking at the owner occupied properties. So we would need more information about what are the current expectations of commercial properties as far as the structural maintenance that Beth was talking about and the non-structural before we're able to answer that. But we understand that that's a huge part of our pedestrian network, is that the combination of those two. For our scope and what we could accomplish within the space of a year, our focus was on the on residential. But we're not going to let go of that, John, I promise. Great. Okay. And Beth, you've got another question or comment? Yeah, go ahead.
Mayor, don't hate me. I just wonder what it would be if it's maybe just more sensitive to consider the occupants, but like in terms of accessibility, obviously there's no difference if you're on a sidewalk and something is blocked and that property's owner occupied. I know you don't, probably doesn't think that, but like, I don't know. I'm curious maybe what sensitivities to consider in a limited experience of like where I live. I notice like the properties that are rentals have a management company, and often like they do a relatively good job clearing. This snow is the only one, but yes, I'm just curious what to consider there.
Thanks. I just think it's an equity issue. I think income producing property is much easier to feel comfortable saying, if you're earning income on this property, you've got to keep it up. You got to take care of it. And we're not as worried about your capacity. Of course, there may be issues like that in some places. But if it's a homeowner who is not generating income, it's just a trickier issue. And the equity issue of paying, how you charge people, poor neighborhoods that don't have sidewalks, neighborhoods that have really long walks with big properties, how you do that appropriately is really complicated, I think. And the commercial stuff's just a lot simpler. I think you don't have to worry about all that equity nearly as much. I don't know. That's just a quick reaction. I agree with you. Of course, you don't care whose sidewalk it is that you can't get through. That's and keeping that goal in mind is fundamental. Yeah.
Absolutely. Thanks for the discussion on that. All right, I'm going to go ahead and move us forward, and thank you all again for attending the presentation. we'll take a look at how the recording looks. We may have to do some magic editing on this. But we got some wonderful information from you today. Thanks again to both Clarence and Nate for stepping in so wonderfully during the internet instability at the Innovation Lab. And at the bottom of the screen is that URL that we promised. There is a project page that follows this whole journey, and we'll post the recording of this. We'll also post the final recommendations, what happens with those recommendations. So this project continues to live, and you can stay updated by looking at the project page. Great. All right, thanks everybody. And please, if you have any further questions about the project, reach out to Clarence or Nate or myself. We're happy to talk your ear off about it. Thanks so much. That concludes our presentation today.
Thank you all. Great job, team.
Fantastic.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Thank you.